I'll be able to show a clip, hopefully, if you're okay with it, of that performance. So in the beginning of this, people will have already kind of seen what I'm talking about. Nice. All right, let's do it. Jonjan, I am super excited to have you on. To reiterate to you in person and the audience, I was blown away by your performance. And so far, never seen anything like it. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, and she was also blown away. Also had a lot of questions about your nails, which you mentioned in the show. But something like your talent doesn't happen overnight. And I want to get to know that process, where you're from, kind of your upbringing with music as well. So I know you mentioned you are half Turkish, half British, and that you were born in Istanbul. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and what that was like growing up there?
Sure, yeah. It's not stuff that I remember that much of, but I have some kind of key snippet memories of being around fish markets and being on boats going in between the two halves of Istanbul, and having a bit of a disjoint in my memory when I arrived in England and finding just a different culture here and maybe a little bit less warm in terms of culturally, that's let's say the formative memories for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't a period that affected me so much, I think, going into my childhood later.
Okay. And how old were you when you moved to
about
England?
5 or 6.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So early days.
Yeah.
And music wise, when did you kind of learn guitar or start picking up the guitar?
Well, my parents, like your parents, they tried to instill different things into me as a kid and try me on lots of things. So there was boxing, there was swimming, there was jogging, running, and all sorts of different sports and badminton and stuff. And of course, one of those things was music. They put me into flute lessons, which I was terrible at.
Okay.
At about age 8, I absolutely sucked. I was terrible, and I hated it as well. So they're like, okay, strike one. Maybe he's not musical, maybe he is. Let's see. And then they put me into piano lessons around age 10, which was in a darkened room. Now that I think about it, which probably was not at all inviting for a kid to come and learn. And I sucked. I was terrible. Didn't have a spark, nothing. But then I heard Carlos Santana on Mum's car stereo, and she said, "Oh, this is the Abraxas album." And Santana played electric guitar, but he had a Latin percussion orchestra kind of with him in the band. And something about that just resonated with me. I was kind of hooked on guitar since then, and I kind of said, I want to learn that instrument. What is that sound? How is he getting that searing sound? I want to do that. So that big gun my journey into guitars and guitaring. So I started at age 13.
Age 13. Amazing. I through some background research, I managed to spot some of your inspirations, including Carlos Santana and Raul Madón, which I have to thank you for, because I wasn't aware of him, and of course I had to look into him. And in the same way that I was blown away by you, I was blown away by him. It's just unlike anything out there, and so. I'm now a fan of yours and his, and that's thanks to you. But and then who is it? Rodrigo y Gabriela as well.
Yeah.
And I can see from all of them different things that you've pulled into your own craft. Obviously, with Raul, you have the percussive elements, and same with Rodrigo y Gabriela as well, but they're a duo. Were those early influences, aside from Carlos Santana, and what did you take from them that you're now doing in your own craft?
I'd say both Raul Midon and Rodrigo Gabriela. I met them. I was shown their music around about the same time, maybe when I was 16, 17. So I've been playing guitar for maybe 3 years, 4 years, something like that. At that time, I was still like massively an electric guitarist. I was an electric lead guitarist, and that was my kind of forte, playing blues, rock, Latin rock, that kind of stuff, some jazz. And it wasn't until maybe 4 years after, around age 20, that I started playing acoustic in the way that I play it now, or started delving into that. But they definitely impacted and shaped what would come later.
Yeah.
Rodrigo and Gabriela for like a bit of the flamenco infusion, and seeing how they use, especially Gabriela, how she uses flamenco influences on her percussive ability on the guitar and some of her techniques. And Raul for kind of taking an R&B approach to the acoustic percussion guitar, and that can definitely have some influence on the funk side of things as well. So that was fascinating. His approach is so conducive and additive to the form of his music. So it's not over the top percussiveness at all. It's not flashy particularly, although it is extremely technical and very, very difficult. But it adds so much to the track in just the perfect way. It doesn't overplay in any way, and I wanted to take some of that as much as possible. I didn't want to be too gimmicky,
right,
with that style. So with my music, I wanted to have the groove of both Raul Midon and Rodrigo Gabriela's music, but without maybe some of the over the top flashiness of some other acoustic percussive players, where it's just not for show, but it's maybe for embellishment. Whereas I wanted to focus on groove, and focus on rhythm, and providing a kind of a full band experience, but with just me solo,
which comes across fully. I think that's one of the most impressive parts about your performance and your talent is all these sounds come into your ears, and it's all coming from one person and with one instrument, and it's super impressive. So you picked up the guitar at age 13. Were you self-taught? Did you have a teacher?
I think for 2 years, 1.5, 2 years, I was self-taught, and I made a lot of improvement in a really short space of time. It seemed like this instrument kind of worked well for me, and I worked well for it in a way that none of, like the piano or the flute, it was just not a thing. I'm also quite I think I have an addictive personality. If there's something that I like and that clicks with me, especially at that time, when you're a teenager, creative things that click with you and kind of click with your brain at that time, I think you have a habit of like jumping on them and like forming very, very quickly, making them having like big creative steps in a short period of time. So I felt that. After maybe 1 or 2 years, I had a guitar tutor for a little while, who quite quickly kind of became defunct. That kind of peaked quite quickly, and I was kind of like, I don't particularly like this guy, and I don't think I'm learning very much after this point. Looking back now, as a professional, I think he was just a terrible teacher. Then at school, maybe age 17, 18, I had a jazz guitarist tutor at school for maybe once or twice a month. He was fantastic, absolutely amazing dude. Dave Austin. If he's
we'll
there,
shout him out.
He's listening. Massive thanks to Dave Austin. Fantastic, incredible guitarist, incredible teacher as well.
Is he still teaching?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I bumped into him once in London maybe 5 years ago.
Oh, cool.
And he was working with lots of artists, doing lots of stuff. I'm not sure if he was teaching, but he seemed busy as hell with his own thing. I was really happy to see that.
Nice. It'd be great if he came to a show as a full circle kind of moment.
Yeah. But I went to one of his when I was his student,
Nice.
which is incredible. As well. Yeah. Over at the Rhythm Factory, which I don't think it's a thing anymore, but yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So Dave Austin, you worked with him, and I guess that kind of took you to that next level that you were looking to go.
Yeah, definitely. He opened my mind up to some jazz stuff that I had never properly like kind of got into, and still jazz is definitely not my area.
Mhm.
I'm definitely not able to like kind of I don't know, hold my own with jazz guys in like a high level way. But yeah, Dave opened my ears to lots of new sounds, and I'd say the neo soul kind of stuff and more kind of on the jazz side of things. That was a big influence from Dave, and that was amazing. He was also an incredible teacher and an incredible musician, which is, I think it's a hard combination to find.
Yeah.
A fantastic musician is not necessarily a great teacher, and vice versa. Let's say we will tend to have specialisms. But yeah, he was great. After that, I wanted to continue music study formally, and so I went to uni, and I went to a kind of music conservatory down in the south of England, and I studied music.
Okay, and just music in general, or was there a specialty?
It's called professional musicianship in guitar.
Okay,
so it was specifically on
to
guitar.
Okay,
and my specific kind of, it ended up being my specialization was solo performance. Although I never, even studying that, I never thought I would actually be a solo guitar performer. At that time, it wasn't really a thing. I was still very much a kind of an electric lead guitarist. So,
okay,
yeah.
And what does uni look like when studying guitar? Because obviously you need your math and your sciences, but when you're going to uni for a very specific thing like guitar, what does that mean for your courses and sort of day to day?
It was a varied course. There was quite a lot of kind of musical history in there from very specific viewpoints and on subjects maybe that wouldn't be touched in other syllabuses. So, for example, history of rock, history of blues, history of jazz, and these kind of things, how these things intersect, what key artists, what key social factors, what key historical factors were conducive for these genres to come about socially, economically, geographically. There was also intense training on stage, just getting us used to big stages, and every week being on a big stage, communication with sound technicians and sound engineers, how to make that relationship between you as an artist and whoever sound engineer you've got working with you, which is a very important relationship. And to me, a sound engineer I'm working with, when I'm on stage, they are my god.
Yeah,
because it's in their hands for me to sound good or bad. So if there's one piece of advice that I definitely learned, it's always learn the name of your sound engineer.
Okay.
Because nobody in that context wants to be called mate.
Yeah.
You're right, mate. Can I have a little bit more of can I have the treble up?
Yeah.
Nah, learn your sound engineer's name.
Cool.
Like Rodrigo or whatever. Like,
nice.
Always learn the sound engineer's name.
I think that's a good piece of advice, and maybe applicable to outside of your engineer as well, as referring people to their names and knowing them, who you're working with.
Networking in general. And,
absolutely.
Names,
and if you find one, then you get to use them in other performances as well. So you said you worked on big stages. So you started performing in uni, or were you performing live before that?
I was playing in smaller venues around. It was in Brighton. In London and Brighton, I was playing in smaller venues. But the uni itself had access to the Concorde 2, which I'm not sure is still running or not. But that was a fairly big stage, and as part of the exercises, we'd be up there every week and kind of just to kind of I don't know what the phrase is when you're what's the word, to shown something and regularly shown something, put in a certain position, just so that it becomes natural and normal. So that was helpful. And by far the biggest thing was just being surrounded by musicians, surrounded by guitarists way better than me, surrounded by musicians of way higher caliber and many different varieties of musicians. That was fantastic. I made lifelong connections I still hold really dear to me today. But I also had that feeling of I was once a big fish in a small pond. I was the best guitarist in my local area, which felt amazing.
Yeah.
And then you feel like, I'm incredible. And then you get put into the wider world, or the world like a music institute, and you realize I've got a lot of practice to do. And that's a good feeling.
Good feeling.
I think it is. I think that's conducive to growth. You don't want to always be in rooms where you're the best of anything. It's healthy in life, I think, to be put in positions where you're surrounded by people who are better than you, or at least who instill kind of inspiration into you and make you want to practice or make you want to grow in many fields.
Was there an adjustment with that feeling? As in, I'm sure you didn't just kind of wake up and say, oh, this is good that I'm not the best guitarist. Was it an adjustment that you had to realize and process?
Definitely. Yeah. Feelings of jealousy all over the place, feelings of, not being cut out for things and stuff like that. But I think it can be a skill for many creatives and many people, I guess, if you can turn things like jealousy, which is a major thing in the creative industry, and many others, if you can turn that into an energy that is productive for you, that inspires you instead of kind of creates jealousy, but it creates inspiration, then that's something you can use to grow with. I'm not saying I'm particularly effective at that at all, but I aim to be.
Nice.
I hope to be.
I think the awareness is enough to make those moves. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's good stuff, man. I really connect with that. Not that I'm, the best guitarist, but I think just being humble and knowing that you don't know everything is super important.
Absolutely. I think someone who vocalizes that they know everything definitely is not the person that knows everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's so crazy to hear that from you, because from an audience member looking in, I mean, I think that you're the best guitarist, one of the best guitarists I've ever seen. And, to imagine that you're sitting there and thinking, oh, I have a lot of work to do is, it's crazy to hear that perspective. So appreciate you being vulnerable
it's the absolute downright truth. That even to this day, I'd done a So Far Sounds performance yesterday, and the other artists were absolutely insane, absolutely great, just incredible in ways that are not directly kind of encroaching on my specific like instrumental field, let's say, but in other areas where I can definitely learn from in terms of audience interaction and kind of warmth of character and bring across their honest personalities on stage and using that effectively. I've got a lot of growing to do.
Yeah.
And I was in a room where I felt like I'm learning a lot just from watching these artists. And again, that's a good position to be in, I think.
Absolutely. And the fact that they are probably doing something very different to you, and you can't do what they do and they can't do what you do, but still learning from each other and growing, which is really cool. There's
still crossover there where you can definitely learn in some ways a lot more, because there's at the end of the day, we're performing. We're all performing. We're performing entertainers, and so there is definitely an element that you can learn from that. A shout out to Valentina and Darcy.
Nice.
Who were there last night.
Are those the two artist names?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just those names, or do they have a surname as well?
Darcy's, I can't remember Darcy's surname, but I'm sure we'll add it in post.
Yeah, absolutely.
Valentina is literally Valentina.
Okay.
And she's amazing. I've seen her a couple of times, and we've got an interesting relationship. We never want to be the one playing after the other one. So she played after me yesterday, but I've been the one playing after her other times, and we're kind of like, I don't want to follow you.
Yeah. That's an interesting dynamic that I actually felt when I was at that show that day, which I kind of want to get into later when we kind of get to later down your career. You describe your style as passionate flamenco with dynamic funk. Because you picked up the electric guitar, it sounds like you had different kind of styles and genres that you were working with in guitar. When did that style kind of become who you are identifying with?
I would say it was from age 20-ish. It was kind of after uni even. I remember one of my end of year kind of degree graded performances was on acoustic solo playing a percussive style, and that was a sort of proof of concept that this style that I'm kind of trying to work out is working, and it can be effective, and it can be effective as a solo guitar thing. It's not boring the audience too much, and it can hold up on its own. And if my compositions can hold up on their own as well, I never set out to be a solo performer at all. I never. If you said to 16-year-old Jonjan, you're going to be a solo acoustic guitarist and that's going to be your income, I'd have been shocked. I would be like, no, what? I thought I was going to be in a blues band as a lead guitarist, or as in a funk band or something like that. But yeah, I would say at around age 20, and it's around age 21, 22, I moved back to Istanbul, and I started playing on the streets there, playing this style that you see me playing now in a very prototypical form, testing tracks and testing compositions to see, with the mentality of, if I can make money playing this music on the street, to bypassers, to strangers who, they're not buying a ticket, they're just trying to get to work or something. But if the music can take them, or the performance can kind of grab them enough for them to kind of want to give some money, or to sit and stand and watch, then there's something probably good about it. So that was the mentality, yeah.
And what was that experience like, playing on the street for people?
It was a major part of my 20s. After that, all around Europe, around Istanbul, around Dublin, and around London. I could talk for hours on the act of busking, the art of street performance in general. It has its skill set and its niche and its style of performance, in the same way that having an intimate gig like a So Far Sounds is a style of performance, or a background hotel gig, or a festival gig on a main stage. They're all different performance types, and so you get used to them. Busking, for me, it created a discipline in my performing, and a total respect for whatever you put out as a performer is what you'll get back. And you can't expect to get back so much if you're not putting out the absolute best that you can. With busking, I felt it was very, very obvious. If I'm not playing to the best of my ability and performing, and by that I mean with my body, with my face, with my body posture, showing that I'm enjoying what I'm doing, then I won't earn as much as if I'm doing those things.
Sure, yeah.
Busking definitely taught me those things. And when you're playing on a street, sometimes a cold street, sometimes a wet street, with all sorts of traffic happening, people running past, all sorts of distractions, things that you have to worry about. Is someone going to steal my bag from behind me? Is my gear safe? Okay. When you do that a lot, then you're brought into a warm luxury hotel atmosphere, or a So Far Sounds, or I don't know, a stage with lighting and warmth, and a sound engineer asking you, what do you need? It's easy.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, those conditions are not usual, I guess. And it makes a lot of sense now watching you perform, saying what you're saying, that you pulled in from busking. Makes a lot of sense. Something that I picked up on was that you were very prepared. You brought a poster, I don't know what you would call it, but something, pop-up banner, and something that people would be able to look at, to recognize the name, and put a face to a name. Things like that, just the way you set up, and just something about your presence just felt very prepared. And I guess that is, it makes sense that the background there is probably what you brought into those sort of performances.
That's interesting, and thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we were talking about it in a positive light, for sure. Yeah,
interesting. I'd say I try and create an air of professionality when I'm performing. Be that on the street, be that in the hotel, be that in someone's house, anything. I try and just kind of a bit of a luxury, maybe, in a way, which is partially why. And I wish I brought it today, but my guitar case is a kind of ivory white, which is quite rare for guitar cases, instrument cases. They're normally just black, the standard kind of flight case black, like the cases we've got around there. That's when I rock up to a place, people are kind of like, okay. I've had lots of comments about it afterwards, and I'm kind of like, okay, interesting. 100%, you hit the nail on the head. The preparedness is from busking, because when you're busking, all sorts of things go wrong, and if one of those things go wrong, that means you probably won't earn your money for that day or those hours, unless you've got the backup in place. So I'd have spare batteries, I'd have spare cables, because that cable might decide to break that day, and whatever. I had spare, like, a nail replacement kit to repair my nails, spare strings, even a spare pickup, because I break the electronic systems in guitars that kind of amplify the sound of the guitar, of which I use quite specific ones. And so all these kind of things, I was kind of always ready, thinking, and of course rain, all sorts of covers to put on the things, and like, how much rain is it going to be? Is it still a performable rain, or is it just, it's rain? So I think that stayed with me in the performing industry in general.
Now, obviously doing it all on your own, you've learned a lot, but I'm sure it was an adjustment now working with people like a sound engineer or a venue and all that sort of stuff. Was that welcomed? Because you call it a luxury now, but at first, was it something that you welcomed, or was it a bit overwhelming at first to try and get that to work?
Again, because of the training from the Music Institute, I was versed in that.
Right.
And I was
Yeah.
I had done gigs before then, in bands and stuff. So I was okay with that. It was an interesting experience learning that as a solo performer, where I don't have a singer on stage. That's like the main beacon for people to look at, and the main focus, let's say. That took a little bit of getting used to. I still feel a little bit strange sometimes, and I still feel like I should be an electric guitarist in a band, but I'm doing this thing as a side project.
Interesting.
But it's just taken over. So yeah.
That is so interesting because it was something I had in my mind, but wasn't sure to ask because it is such a specific thing that you do. And sorry, I don't mean to call it a thing, but a performance, a talent that you have. Yeah. Do you ever get the itch to do? Because you're clearly a super talented guitarist that can probably form it into other genres. Do you ever feel the itch to do that and make a total pivot? And are you comfortable with doing this for kind of the foreseeable?
Number one, I think I'm addicted to this style, to what I'm performing. I do love it, and I hope it's clear when I'm performing that I love it. Absolutely. Yeah. I do absolutely love that moment when I'm playing and I finish a track and there's that just one kind of little moment of silence before the audience applause, and I like that. I like feeling like I've done a good performance there, and they're going to enjoy it, and then the claps come, and I'm kind of like, okay, cool. But yeah, I do think about other things, and I play on the electric here and there, not so often these days. But creatively, my mind is always kind of going with things, and I've got really, really sensitive ears. So I'm listening to lots of different styles of music all the time and kind of getting inspiration from lots of different little things. Nice. Not necessarily impacting my music writing all the time, but just getting excited about little things I hear from video game music to K-pop.
Yeah.
To, if something falls down the stairs but it has an interesting rhythm, I'm kind of like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah. So
yeah, all sorts of these things. These days I'm working with some singers and some other instrumentalists here and there doing little collabs and stuff like that, and I like that creative outlet as well. In the medium term, I think I'd be interested in a project with the correct kind of singer, using a little bit of the acoustic percussion stuff to enable dynamics for the duo to kind of go up to a level that exceeds what a normal acoustic guitar can do, but then also having that range of dynamics so that we can bring it right down and make something really, really intimate. Because of course with dynamics it lets you highlight the intimacy as well as the loudness, because if something's so loud up there, when it does drop down to really intimate, that accentuates that intimacy. And so I've been working with some singers on that kind of stuff. No idea when that might be going out being a thing. But hope that answers.
It did, yeah. I saw the video with you and an artist called Story, who was also there that night. And she's amazing. And you guys sounded great together. And I mean, I don't know, maybe she can be the singer. But anyway, it sounded great. So looking forward to whatever that may be.
Cool. Shout out to Story, she's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to get her on.
Nice.
But yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, you mentioned dynamics of the performance, which is something, again, that I picked up on with your performance, because with your track called Patience, throughout the whole track, you're increasing the tempo at the end and really going for it. And you're on this emotional ride with you as you really get into it. And it's captivating, but you've had to build that track without an audience. How do you kind of approach that of by yourself in a room, trying to find those dynamics of a performance without an audience to kind of feedback from?
That's an interesting question. that track particularly, I don't know whether I said it on the day or not, but that was written as an exercise in dynamics.
Okay.
That was me kind of, again, as a proof of concept. It was a very early track that went down well busking on the street.
Okay.
And because it gets faster, it can be quite flashy, and I can kind of mess around with that when you're busking as well. But that was a proof of concept for my own skill, and for me trying to write around the topic of dynamics to kind of have a track that accentuated the loudness and then brought it right back down, and kind of trying to being able to show off that skill, which I think is an underrated skill in music and in musicians, but is so, when it's used effectively, it's so obvious, or at least obvious in the feeling it gives to the audience.
100%.
Yeah.
As I said, I mean, I was on a ride with you, and again, I think I feel pretty confidently speaking for the rest of the audience there that we were all on the ride with you, because when you brought it down, you get closer, and then as you're going at it, it's amazing. I'll be able to show a clip, hopefully, if you're okay with it, of that performance. So in the beginning of this, people will have already kind of seen what I'm talking about. And then you've got the obviously the nail percussive kind of hit, which really brings you in, and the audience erupted. It was so cool.
That was a good night. Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah. You say good night. Is that? I mean, do you ever have a bad night?
No, not that I can think of. No.
Okay.
Maybe a bad night might. The first thing that comes to mind as soon as you said that was a time where I broke my guitar on stage.
Okay.
So that was like
unlucky.
Yeah. But I think the audience had a great time. Like they had a good show. They just saw something quite dramatic. And, no, I can't think of a bad night that I've had any time recently or in any memory or necessarily. No. There's times where I feel like I didn't play at my best, or I didn't give the dynamics enough time, or I was a bit how can I say, I didn't give enough steps for certain dynamics in certain places, so I should have had a little bit more finesse and nuance to a build up of a dynamic bit. And in my mind I'm kind of like, okay, I need to make a note for next time, do that a little bit more dynamically. Maybe some rhythmic things here and there, some kind of buzzy notes here and there, but I think I've got to a point where I'll make mistakes, and I know them for myself, and I let them wash over me and continue, and it's kind of like it's part of it. But a lot of these mistakes an audience member wouldn't even notice or be aware of. So why should I bring attention to them? I think that's part of being professional. Yeah,
definitely. A podcast I watch is a comedy podcast, but the host Rick Glassman talks about Steve Martin and his book, and in that book he mentions what's that?
Steve Martin, the actor.
Yeah. And he mentions, don't let the audience know that you're bombing, and even though that's stand up and comedy, I think it applies in the same way, totally. Because I don't think the audience will ever know some of the things that you think are not working.
And I see so many, especially after having done more than 150 of the sofars, I see so many sofa artists where that is a thing. And of course I'm analyzing as well, and not necessarily harshly criticizing, but in my mind making mental notes for myself and in general. And after you've seen so many other artists, when someone fluffs something, anything that I feel is probably not perceptible to the audience, maybe I perceived it as a guitarist maybe or something, but it's minor, it's nothing. But then some artists might stop, or they might say, oh sorry, or they might go, oh, or something like that. I'm kind of like, you don't need to vocalize that or do anything. It's just let it wash over you and let it continue, let the flow continue. It doesn't matter if it was a bum note or a buzzy note or something like that. I also have a major issue with artists that get up on stage, have been introduced, the spotlight is on them, their performing time has started, and the first thing they do is tune their guitar. I feel like that's like a cardinal sin. Nobody wants as an audience member, I don't want to see the performance start, everything's ready, and then boom.
Right.
Sorry guys. Like, do that before. To me that's a professional, an element of professionality.
I would agree with that. In on the flip side, obviously, if it goes for too long as an audience member, you're like, okay, well, but there is a level as an audience member of kind of with the artist in that way. You kind of see how they prepare.
Yeah, interesting.
Um, So, but I totally understand what you're saying in that regard. But I think I've also been a part of an experience where that felt like you were closer to the artist. Yeah.
Backstagey, a bit like
Yeah,
behind the scenes.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
I never thought
yeah.
of it like that.
But again, there's a fine balance between like
maybe contextually, like So Far Sounds is probably somewhere where that is maybe okay.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Again, with the theme of me trying to present myself very professional, or as a bit more of a maybe not luxury but refined. I don't know, performer of something, or because I've done so many, I wouldn't want to do that there. If I'm setting up on stage before I've been introduced, 100% I'm tuning up. That's like my main thing to do, especially when you're whacking the guitar so much. Like the tuning can go out definitely. But once I'm introduced and like the spotlight is on, let's say metaphorically, no, the first sounds someone should hear from me on the guitar are the intended sounds, not a string tuning up, in my view.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a level of professionalism that maybe some people have to get to.
Or maybe it's not applicable to others. I hear your point definitely, and I never thought of it like that, as like a little backstage kind of thing. So
and in all fairness, I haven't either until you mentioned that. I was kind of thinking I understand, but yeah,
no, it's interesting.
I still want to dig into more of the preparation for performing live, and I also want to get to your album Strings Attached, which mastered at Abbey Road Studios, which is awesome. Maybe we can tie those two together. How do you know a track or song of yours is ready to bring to an audience?
To an audience, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'd say as soon as it can take any form of performable shape, is what I would say now.
Okay.
Especially for certain gigs, I would give some audiences, depending on the gig context, a very prototypical maybe skeleton structure of a track, or the skeleton riff or the skeleton idea of a track, and kind of just see how it felt for me to perform it to a live audience, and how the reception was as well. What moments did people maybe clap or like start clicking or something like that, and what moments did I feel like the audience is bored right now, and stuff like that. I feel it's really handy to prototype a track live.
Yeah.
Busking is fantastic for that as well.
Yeah.
If you stop making money, then it's probably something's not quite there. Could be many other factors as well. Busking is its whole own thing.
Yeah.
You can pour your heart out and earn nothing sometimes.
Sure.
But then you could also pour your heart out and earn a hell of a lot. I got taken to a luxury hotel for a luxury hi-fi company performance in India because I was seen busking in King's Cross in London.
Wow, that's amazing.
So yeah, you can.
You never know.
Places,
yeah, definitely. Are you busking currently?
Not since COVID.
Okay.
I felt morally very. I had a moral dilemma about busking during COVID because naturally it congregates people. While I'm performing, people congregate.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was something that wasn't acceptable because it could easily spread virus potentially. So I found myself after COVID kind of not really getting back into it. Maybe an age thing as well. I'd done it for so many times in my 20s for so many years, and I think some parts of my body were kind of like, let's ease off on the busking, the carrying of the gear and going on the buses and everything, and setting up in the rainy, wet, cold at times. So yeah, I think I've stepped away from busking now, but I don't know. I'm kind of getting an itch every now and then because it's definitely something I still love and I still enjoy it. And there's a unique pleasure when people come up to you after you've just finished a track while you're busking, and they kind of say, "Hey, thank you. I've been having a shit day," or like I had no intention of stopping for so long, but I've watched you for 20 minutes. Thank you so much. And to me, that's like it's one of the purest forms of music as an art.
Yeah,
you're touching someone in their day, and they're vocalizing it to you afterwards. It's beautiful.
Yeah, unintentionally.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
probably the coolest part of street
Yeah.
performance and,
Yeah.
and busking.
Yeah.
Yeah, stumbling upon great talent. Hmm. So yeah, going back to the craft of these songs. So yeah, so you mentioned about when they're ready to perform live. How do you when you sit down? How do you start crafting these songs? Do you start with the rhythm? Do you start with the guitar? You have, and I have to shout it out. You have an awesome video on YouTube of you doing body percussion. I think it might be your first YouTube video.
Yeah.
But it is awesome. And you did it in the performance as well. You did the body percussion and then snapped to keep the rhythm, and then came over to an audience member who took a little time to get the high five.
Yeah.
But if anything, it added to the effect because you kept going, and then it was like right on time.
Yeah.
And it was such a good touch. Yeah, I guess more so to shout that out was the reason for that. But also, yeah, do you kind of start with a kind of tempo rhythm in mind and then bring in the guitar, or you chording it out on the guitar first?
I'd say I'm from an electric guitarist background, I'm very riff focused.
Okay.
So I'll come up with a riff or
Yep.
a chord progression, and that'll be the instigating factor that I then add the percussion onto or add the groove onto.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally think, what would I want my drummer doing? And I kind of, if I'm working with a drummer, what kind of groove would I want to hear, or a percussion band, the congas and stuff? What would I want to be hearing? What would a guiro be doing? Where the kind of the beat be in that? Where would the embellishments be? But yeah, it's. I think I'm quite traditional guitarist in that way. I'm very riff based, so I'll come up with the riff first most of the time, or a chord progression. Yeah.
And you have names to your songs, but there's no lyrics. What inspires those names?
Some of it is the context in which they were written, or the mood or the feeling while they were being written. Not necessarily that they were written about a topic. Some of them is just, this happened to be written for the most part on a balcony in Istanbul during a certain period or something like this. Others, it's maybe something that I feel that the riff or the chord progression lends itself to, or a mood that I attributed to it. Very rarely, if ever, am I writing about love or romance so much. Mm-hmm. I've got one track, Do You Have a Daughter? I don't know if I played it that night or not. That's quite specifically about so as a half Turkish guy, my grandma tries to kind of pair me, or has kind of tried to pair me with Turkish women, Turkish girls, and so that's kind of relating to that. Family members trying to kind of, especially in certain cultures, trying to pair you with someone that they feel like is a good fit, and that kind of thing. So I just imagine her kind of pottering about different villages and cities doing, do you have a daughter? I've got a son.
That's so cool.
That kind of thing. That track particularly felt quite maybe romantic and kind of sensual in itself. Yeah, I would say the mood that takes me, or the mood that I feel the riff or the groove maybe instigates in me, impacts the name. Patience, as an example, is kind of relating to the dynamics. It's kind of waiting and being able to build up those kind of high level dynamics and bring it back down.
Nice. What prompted you to make an album in the first place?
It had been at least 10 years that music and those tracks were paying my rent, my bills, my food, my drink, paying for the dates that I was going on and everything like that, holidays. And I kind of felt it was just time to put them to something, to put them to the medium of recorded audio. And so many audience members would come up and kind of say, hey,
where can I find you?
Where can I find you? Hey, where can I find? Hey, I want to listen to your music. Yeah. And I had to say, for so many years, you can listen on YouTube. You can find YouTube videos and stuff. So it was time. Also, it was recorded, although it came out last year, end of 2023. It was recorded at the end of 2020 on a boat floating on the Thames. Mastered at Abbey Road later, but and it kind of felt like the end of COVID was just the correct, or the end of 2020. Definitely not the end of COVID then, but it was just the right time of just a period of time, that dead time,
Quiet,
basically. Yeah.
And how was that process of recording? Are they all one take, or are they comped together, or?
They're all one take, and it was all live. And that was the kind of that was the mindset. You know, I think I'm very much a live performer, and that's where my music shines, I think. And the kind of the performing context is so live based. So to me, it had to be that way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It was a great experience. It was fantastic. I worked with an amazing engineer, and a little bit stressful, definitely. Very, very creatively fun. Working with an engineer that's so talented and had a very, very, very interesting approach with microphones. We had a fleet of microphones. There's pictures of it. Like,
I was going to ask.
From the 60s, from the 50s, the ribbon mics, all sorts of different things, kind of pointing at me. It was just it was really cool, and doing that on a boat as well. Just kind of feeling a bit of sway every now and then was quite unique. They were recorded over 3 days.
Okay.
On the boat, which is now Lightship 95 Studios.
Nice. Did you have all those tracks written already before you decided to do the album, or did you decide to do an album and then have to kind of write some songs for it?
No, those tracks had been written and had been earmarked by me for an album at some point for ages.
Okay.
Just getting around to it was the thing, and I think also procrastination was a thing, like and being a little bit scared to actually step out there and kind of say, yeah, this is going to be a thing, because that also solidifies me as an artist, I felt, because before that I don't know, I always felt like I was a performer but not necessarily an original artist. I had this strange kind of relationship with the industry, whereas now I can kind of say, yeah, I've got an album out and I'm a performing guitarist and an artist. So yeah, that was an interesting step. I should also mention I was performing under my full passport name, given birth name, which is Jonjan Kavlakolu with a silent C and a silent G, which is so unmarketable.
Yeah.
And I'd done that for about 8 years until I realised, this isn't so effective. So I changed a C to a J in my first name and just went with the first name.
Is that something, was that out of pride because you wanted your full name there? Or was it just, you weren't aware or didn't know? Or?
I think, I've always been aware of how, of having a weird name in England where people can't pronounce it when they read it, definitely. But, I think I just went with it. And then after a certain point, because I hate the marketing, I hate the social side of it. I was like, I can't deal with doing a whole new website and changing the logo and doing all the new socials. I can't. And I wish I did. And if there's anyone listening to this where you need to do a marketing rebrand or something like that as an artist, as a business, whatever, and you're just like procrastinating it, I'd say the earlier you do it, the better. So, yeah.
That is good advice. Yeah. I think there is a nervousness around, going through a restructure of branding.
Definitely. And then once I'd done it and kind of properly dedicated to doing it and committed, it was great, and I'm so glad. It also removed me in a way from the product, from the performing entertainment product is Jonjan, Jonjan. And then there's now me, which is kind of like I'm kind of like the manager, I guess, of that performing product, and having that separation, mentally, it was helpful for me.
I like that. Yeah. Do you still struggle identifying now as an artist versus a performer, or have you fully accepted that?
I think I've accepted that. Yeah. A part of that is also the kind of gigs that I get. Just as a general income, as my day-to-day income, they can be more backgroundy. They can be hotel gigs. They can be performances where I'm not a star. I'm not a star in the spotlight kind of performer.
Yep.
And I think that's a bit lending itself also to me being an instrumental guitarist. I can be used in roles where maybe a lead singer or a soul singer with a band is not used, and vice versa. Yeah. So sometimes, although I'm performing my own tracks, they're originals and they are tracks that are on the album, I am playing for a tech networking event.
Right.
And so, yeah, I'm not the main kind of thing, but it pays a bomb, and I'm playing my own music, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, why not? But you tone it down, I imagine, because how do you not become the star of the show when you're in full gear?
Yeah, definitely. You definitely learn to read a room, to understand the context in which you're performing.
Yeah.
But again, relates to busking, relates to performing in different contexts. As a musician, you should be able to have a palette and have a flexibility to the way you perform, the style you perform. You might be performing the same songs, but being able to do them in a way more background, laid back kind of way, rather than in the spotlight, holding audience attention way, and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Mm.
We connected briefly over the phone about the wild, wild west of social media and how it potentially could be toxic, and it feels uncomfortable. Do you think social media is necessary? And if so, how do you get around that mentality of being uncomfortable with it, but still knowing it's something you have to do?
With great difficulty, I would say. I think it is something that is necessary out of respect to the audience. If I'm lucky enough to have an audience member who wants to keep in touch with me, or wants to listen to me again, or wants to be aware of me or connect in some form, and their way of doing that, the easiest way for them to do that is via a social media platform, then I think I should respect that, and I should try my best to be available for them on that platform via that route, because they are kind enough to want to hear me again and to want to kind of enjoy the music, and I feel so complimented by that. So I want to make that as easy for them as possible. So that's one side of the argument of the concept, I say. But on the other side, and I really try to look at myself as a business on this side. I am a cafe, or I am a grocer's, or I am a small bar, or I am a small textile maker, anything like this, a small business that needs to use whatever I can marketing wise to promote my business. Sure, I'm a musician, I'm an artist, but at the end of the day, I'm a sole trader. I'm a business, and so in that context, I think the marketing is necessary. It's just as it is for the small cafe, just as it is for the bar, for the restaurant and stuff. And removing my personal feeling about social media, and the fact that I am posting pictures of myself all the time,
right.
So narcissistic.
Yeah.
If I can try and remove that and just look at it as a business, then that's when I'm feeling most effective with the social media, I think. Equally, I dislike it, and I always feel strange. I also just hate the platforms. I feel like Instagram is so finicky, and getting a video looking great in portrait, but then also its thumbnail, fantastic. Its thumbnail for PC looking great. Its thumbnail on the phone looking great. All those things, it's infuriating.
I totally understand. Even with this podcast, I've always struggled with social media, but again, when you're trying to promote something and put something out there, it is necessary to gain some sort of audience. And it's a learning curve, it's a lot.
Without even going into the psychological implications of getting notifications and putting something up, and I'm like, do people like? Oh, people adore me, and this kind of thing.
I've noticed that as well, because I've only posted my music on kind of my personal page, which usually just has my friends and family, and hopefully it goes to a wider audience. But with this podcast and having a separate page, most of the audience is people I don't know, and I've noticed that the number game is so I guess addicting, and you're like, okay, this got you know, and I'm not getting any crazy views or anything, but there is a discrepancy between some videos, and you're like, what's going on? Why did that?
Why?
You know, and it's exhausting.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it feels like you are trying to meet the criteria of an arbitrary god.
Yeah.
in some
Yeah.
way. Like the criteria are always changing. What am I aiming for? Okay.
The algorithm god.
Yes,
yeah.
It needs to be posted at this time. I need these hashtags. Oh, okay. Well, it's changed now. Absolutely. Like.
Yeah.
There's way better ways for a musician or a creative or a person to be using their time and worry. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a manager?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I'm with a couple of agencies, and for different contexts, different people manage me and kind of give me put me in positions of benefit and put me forward for different gigs and stuff like that, different opportunities. Some of them are exclusive, where it's just me with someone for one particular context or in one territory, and others are very non-exclusive, like agencies around the UK where I'm on their roster, and they're fine with me being with lots of different agencies as well. So yeah, it's fingers in many pies kind of approach. I try and be on lots of different people's radars in lots of different contexts.
Yeah.
For example, I'm with some agencies not as my own performing name at all, as a complete pseudonym. But it's very much me, and the product you get is me, but in a very maybe corporately packaged way.
Okay.
So for some performances where they don't want the client being able to reach out directly to me, but they do want to be able to leverage me. So yeah, they generally lead to very well-paid gigs that are generally outside of the country, which is lovely.
Yeah.
Always a bit strange, like if I'm marketed as a Rodrigo or something like this, as a Carlos, they actually get a Jonjan. But yeah,
is that something that you came up with, or something that your agents and managers suggested?
Oh no, this is this is pretty standard for
Okay.
those kind of agencies. They'll take on artists as a different name, just purely so that the client can't directly contact them.
I see.
Yeah, it's more of I'd say function agency, a private event agency kind of approach.
But you show up to the gig as Jonjan and with your materials and
I
everything.
do, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because by that point they've paid, they've got me, and
Yeah.
so anything that happens after that, the agency doesn't mind. And then on the other side of things, I've got management that kind of just works with me as Jonjan, getting opportunities, and sometimes bartering and doing the business side of things for different opportunities. Yeah, and sometimes I do that for myself as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is always interesting as well. It can be very difficult bartering, arguing your value as yourself. I find it better to have a step in between. In between there. So there's the product.
Yeah.
There's the person kind of selling the product, and then there's me kind of observing that happen.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I feel that's easier and can look more professional depending on the context. A big clothes brand might not want to deal directly with the artist. They are used to dealing with agencies. They're used to dealing with management. So they would maybe find it a bit unprofessional if they're dealing directly with Neo, like the person.
Yeah.
So,
In what situation are you doing the bartering?
I would say smaller gigs, local gigs.
Okay.
For example, a pub.
Yeah.
A pub doesn't really want to talk to my management. They kind of don't really care, you know.
That's fair.
And then of course that comes with that's a whole different context of gigs. Somewhere a personal connection has been made, an intimate gig or a gig that someone has come along and seen me at that might be a corporate event booker, and I made a connection directly with them. I might continue that connection, might continue it kind of in direct contact with them, just because a physical connection was made. There's already a rapport there.
Yeah.
Which I like building. I do like that side of things, but putting a price to yourself is quite difficult when you are arguing for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Uncomfortable a bit, I imagine. Yeah. It seems like you've traveled all over the world with your talent. and in the show you mentioned, I don't know if you went there for performance, but Peru. I think you were in Paris, and based on some of your videos, Italy and what have you. Is there a country or area that you find your music resonates with the most, or is it kind of unanimous?
I'd say Latin American countries, it
Yeah.
goes down really, really well. And Spanish-speaking countries, or maybe Mediterranean Spanish-related. Italy is, as a nation, as a culture, has a huge love of music. I feel like it goes down very, very well there, and I have quite a lot of Italian fans who I love, and I really appreciate them. Same with Spanish-speaking countries, Latin America in general. People are much more almost automatically dancing in Latin American countries with what I do compared to here in London, where people are a bit more reserved and a bit more shy. Those kind of places. I haven't performed in the Middle East apart from, if you would even call it, I call it Europe, but in Turkey. But I would be really interested to perform in more Middle Eastern countries and see maybe on the percussive side of things as well, how the reaction is to that.
Yeah. I'm sure similar to, like, I guess probably Latin America, just because they have a lot of percussive elements in their music as well.
Maybe, but maybe less of a aptitude or a cultural norm to get up and dance. Maybe, not sure. I'd love to experience that.
Yeah.
To be honest, anything that takes me out of London, I'm very happy. Anything that takes me out of the UK, I'm really happy.
Oh wow.
Anything that takes me out of the EU, sign me up. I love traveling with the music.
Is that just because of the experience of something different, or something here that you are trying to get away from?
Interesting. I think both. I think I'm trying to get away from the feeling of vanilla that I feel about London now.
Okay.
And that's not to discredit London. I think it's an amazing city, and for people coming in, I can see why it's so attractive, and it's got so many opportunities, and I respect it a lot. I think I've just been here a long time, and I'm eager to be in other places. I also live a lifestyle that I'm very prepared and very ready to be sent to lots of different places for a long period of time.
Okay.
I wouldn't miss where I am now. I can travel and be on the road and be performing night after night, day after day in different places quite naturally. Yeah. I'm quite happy with that. I like that lifestyle.
And have you thought of making a semi-permanent move?
Potentially. I'm just not sure where yet.
Yeah.
Peru was amazing. Lima was fantastic. And I was there. It was both performance and travel.
Okay.
So I was there performing in some luxury hotels and some bars and some music venues. But then in all of the other time, I was traveling around, seeing the beautiful sights and archaeological ruins of Peru, which are incredible, absolutely amazing, beautiful people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you were talking about it, you were lighting up when you were speaking about it.
I'm still missing Peru, especially on these kind of more greyish, February previously, now March days. Yeah.
You describe your performance as athletic, which I understand why. When you're performing, you're moving with your whole body, a lot of energy, which I'm sure is maybe exhausting, maybe not. Do you train a certain way for that level of performance, or is it just by performing in that way you kind of give it your all? Or like is endurance like kind of part of
Never even
your
thought of
preparation?
And when you say train, you mean like athletic training, like exercise?
I suppose so. I mean, whether that's cardio or just some sort of stamina to kind of go on for whatever it is, however long your set is.
I would say busking is a great training for that.
Yeah.
Because
in all conditions.
yeah, and the longer you're on the street performing, the more money you'll make.
Yeah.
So you've got to get good and get your stamina up, basically. I don't particularly exercise I've never physically exercised athletically for performing ability.
Okay.
But I would say when I do longer sets regularly, you just have to be better. You have to condition yourself to be doing them, and so you do. Like the longest sets I do comfortably are 45 minutes to 1 hour. The context that you met me in, which was the So Far Sounds, I think they're only about 20 minutes, which is really easy for me. So it's nothing. I'm feeling like I'm ready to go after 20 minutes, but the show ends after 20 minutes in So Far. But I can do 45 minutes and 1 hour as like maybe as the maximum is 1 hour before I'm kind of like, I kind of need a break. Yeah, I think body just got used to that.
Yeah.
And because I love it, I think the body is kind of like happy to kind of carry on. Because there's a passion there with it. In terms of general exercise, I do quite a lot of body weight stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of pull-ups and kind of press-ups and anything body weight wise. I like that. Yeah.
Is there ever not a passion when you're performing? As in, is there ever, and I don't know if this is a okay question for you to answer, but
it is.
Is there, when you have an off night or maybe something, you just don't want to perform or something, but you still have to kind of get in that zone.
Mm-hmm.
Do you just, when you get in that zone, it lights the fire in you, or is it while you're doing it, you're aware that you're not fully present?
Maybe the thing I might be aware of is maybe if the audience isn't fully present, or I'm feeling like I'm not particularly appreciated, maybe. But I would still I would find a pleasure in it for myself. Selfishly, I would. Or if it's a particularly bad night for whatever reason, maybe I'd use the opportunity to change up something in a track or try something a bit different and kind of play around with it and get the joy from that. But to be honest, if my hands are on the guitar and I'm performing and I'm in motion, I'm having a good time. Like,
it looks it. Yeah.
Well, we'll say on the topic of maybe the athletic-y kind of thing again, and maybe not being in the right mood or having an off night, it kind of is getting to the gig with the gear is a major thing for me. I use public transport around London, and sometimes I'm bringing my own amplification and stuff like that. Big backpack, maybe even 2 guitars for some things, and a big trolley with a giant amplifier, and lugging that around can be and has been, all through my 20s, can be a slug, a slog, and like that's tricky, and that's where I'm like okay, this is the slog of it. Just getting to the places and coming back late night, carrying all the gear, getting sweaty even before you perform, just because you're like, and then trying to, I don't know, find your way through the public and people in the way and stuff, and there's a dog there. Oh, okay, this person's got a pram, so we're going to move this, and that's the bit where I'm kind of like, okay, here we go. That can be difficult.
That makes sense. I have one more question probably, which is, what does success look for you? I'm familiar with the singer-songwriting kind of career path and maybe what kind of the end goal is for that, but unfamiliar with maybe the sort of instrumentalist solo act. What does success look like? Is it big stages? Is it where you're at, just more frequent? What is it?
For me, it's a couple of measures, but let's say bigger stages, playing in more countries, regularly playing in foreign countries. Ideally this year, I want to be playing in lots of different places regularly. If I didn't come back to London for 6 months because I was on the road, I'd be very happy. I'd be happy with that. That would definitely be a success for me. Greater financial stability from the music, definitely. I don't know how to quantify that specifically, but when I've had really good years, that kind of my best income year, if that could be a regularity, that'd be great. Because at the moment it can be great for some years, and then it can go down and kind of go up and down. And if I can find a more stable way of kind of maintaining that, I'd be very happy with that. And having leveraging my music now that the album's out in other contexts, so films, TV, adverts, anything like that, video games, I would love it. Leveraging those things in that way would be a win, and to me that would be a success. Equally, that being said, it's been at least 10 years now that music has paid for my life, and that was the goal originally. And so it has been happening, and it continues to happen. And so these are all like the bonuses, I guess, in a way. Equally, that being said, I think being a musician is extremely difficult in these ages, no matter where you are. And having a stable life and a decent income, and I don't know, being able to have a family or feel secure financially to do basic human things shouldn't be a luxury, but I feel like for many musicians that has to be a luxury because it's so difficult to make money in the industry. So anything I can do to change that in the industry for musicians or help musicians is something I'd like to do, and it's definitely been a struggle for me up and down. So yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky place. London has so many opportunities, but it's also a very expensive place to live. So it's difficult for musicians.
I sense an eagerness from you to talk about the business side of the music industry, and I consciously didn't ask too much just because there's not enough time to kind of talk about you and your kind of craft while also talking about the wider context of the music industry and what you experienced. I'd love to have you on again, whenever time suits you, but
sure.
I think you have a lot to say about that, and I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Again, failures on my part and things I've learned through mistakes and stuff like that I think would benefit musicians.
Yeah.
Through my failures.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited that whoever watches this, and certainly myself, we got to know you more today because, like I said, questions just flooded my mind after your performance once I kind of calmed down from the whole thing. Is there anything you want to plug? Obviously, you have your album, but any shows or anything like that?
Sure. The album Strings Attached.
Yep.
You can find that on Spotify and Apple Music and everywhere. And please do have a listen to that. I'd really appreciate that. And then you'll get a bit more context to some of the things I've been talking about on the podcast. Aside from that, you'll see me around Europe quite a lot this year, I think. And you can see me on the Isle of Wight in May playing a festival there, which is maybe the thing I'll mention, which is a lovely place to visit. You might also see me being taken around some major UK cities in a giant truck, of which the side will open, and I'll be performing with dancers left and right, which will be very cool. Which will be later on this year. That's super cool. That's a summer kind of thing. Yeah, it'll be over the summer months. I can't say too much more about it, but yeah. Really cool. Yeah, that sounds exciting. And are you planning to come out with another? Like, is another album even kind of part of your roadmap, or? Not anytime particularly soon. Yeah. But yes, at some point, and it will be probably every track will be with another artist. Okay. Different artist. Cool. So the first album was solo guitar instrumental. And I think the next one will be all sorts of collabs with all sorts of different contexts and artists. Amazing. Yeah, that's super exciting. Well, Jonjan, I can't thank you enough for coming on, and thank you. This was such a good chat, and I'm so happy I got to ask the questions. And it's a pleasure, man. Yeah, this is therapeutic for me. This is good. Pure therapy. So yeah, thank you. Amazing. So much. Yeah, of course, man. Pleasure, man. Of course. Yeah, thank you. When you would answer a question, you would stop, but what you were doing was thinking of the next part of your question. I think I interrupted you during those moments, and then I learned along the way, and then you said some good stuff after that pause, and I was like, okay. So, yeah. But anyway, no, it was awesome. You came across well, and cool. A lot of good kind of little bits for people to hear, yeah. Cool. Yeah, in my mind, I'm kind of going through like, I didn't articulate that well. It took too long to find that particular word, and then another word will come to me. It's all but I in these things, and I wouldn't want to send you the questions beforehand to have a script to kind of go from. So I think walking through that process in your mind as you're answering it is also super important. On the topic of giving space to the artist or whatever, I think that's a good trait. Like when you hand them, like, it's sort of like handing the mic to me, right? It's like, here's done. When you hand the mic to someone and they stop, they've said their thing and they stop, but you still hold the mic to them metaphorically. There's always this kind of social pressure kind of thing a bit, but nearly always you get something quite revealing when they do talk again. And I say that as have you heard of Samaritans by any chance? No. It's a suicide helpline. Okay. Basically, it's a 24-hour suicide line here in the UK, and I volunteer for Samaritans. So there was all sorts of training and stuff. But basically, I take suicidal, depressive, and isolated callers. And
you do yourself?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's a lot of listening skills. Yeah. And one thing you definitely learn is when you give someone enough silence. Yeah. They feel compelled to talk a bit more, and that stuff that they say after is quite valuable a lot of the time. Yeah. So yeah, that was good. I never felt like you cut me off.
Okay, cool, nice, good to know. Yeah. But yeah, that I think you're right, and maybe it is that additional pressure of silence that brings about the next kind of phase of that. But yeah, no, it was really good, man, really good. I'm happy. Hopefully, with all these things, sound and video is all sorted. That's like the annoying part of this is making sure that stuff is good. But yeah, cool. Let me switch off the cameras.
Cool. Interested to hear what the mics sound like.
Yeah, I have episodes live, so in the studio. So if you wanted to check it out.